Well, what's up there, DevCentral community? It's John and Jason. And Jason, today we're in two different screens, man. But how's life going there at the Seinfeld apartment is what it looks like.
Yeah, it's going well here in the NYC, the virtual NYC.
The virtual. I don't know that you're actually sitting in New York City right now in Jerry's apartment, but if you are, say hi to Kramer and the fellas. It's awesome, man.
I think they're still in jail. Aren't they still in jail?
They made, yeah, that was the final episode. That's right. So you're like, hey, if they're in jail, no one's using this apartment.
But I'm sure all his cereal is still good, right?
Cereal goes forever, especially probably what they ate. That's awesome, man. Well, good stuff. Well, man, hey, it's great to see everybody out there today. We're streaming live like we always do to YouTube and LinkedIn and Periscope and Twitch. We're on Twitch, so hello to all you gamers out there. And we have an awesome show today. But Jason, like we typically do, I've got an interesting question to kind of kick things off, kind of get to know one another a little bit here, right? So here's the question: if you could be a pro athlete, what sport would you play? Wow,
that's in high school. I would have told you football.
Okay,
I played a few different positions in football. Never one that allowed me to touch the ball. Because I have not. It has not been said about me that I have soft hands.
The hand, yeah, it's like wherever the football is, let's make sure Jason's on the other part of the field, right?
Right. So I love playing linebacker. It was a lot of fun to hit people. Less fun to be hit, but it was a lot of fun to hit people. And then I also played tennis in high school, and I would have loved to have been a pro tennis player.
Yeah, little Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, play on the clay courts or the grass courts at like Wimbledon, kind of thing. Yep. That's
still like one of my life bucket lists is to make it to all the four majors.
Yeah, in tennis.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Speaking of majors, I think what I would do if I could choose, I would play professional golf because it's always sunny and in beautiful locations. And right now where I am, it's freezing cold and I just want to be warm and sunny right now. So
have you watched the British Open? You said sunny and warm.
Well, maybe we stay away from, the old course at St. Andrews when it's blowing and freezing, but save that one. All the other ones are awesome. So
there you go.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, awesome. Well, hey, I know we've got a few cool shows coming up pretty soon. We've got obviously the one today, but then next week we've got the security sidebar. I'm going to have Mr. Brian McHenry. He is like the security expert at F5, and we're going to talk about all kinds of good security stuff. So that's a week from today, next Thursday at 12:30 Pacific. And then after that, we've got Volterra, and not just Volterra, but Volterra with an exclamation point.
There may have been something in the news in the last, month or two about Volterra. So
that's right.
We're excited to have them on board, and cool story, cool technology. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good to go, man. I see Pasilva had a little comment there. John Kruk said you don't need to be an athlete to play baseball. Was John Kruk, was he the one that had like a 6-pack of beer like in the dugout, and he's like, hey,
I think he had it in his back pocket, like instead of his gloves.
Instead of the glove, it was some beer in the whatever. He's got a 6-pack, right there in his on his uniform. That's awesome. It's kind of like I heard a comedian one time talking about professional bowlers, which God love you, man. If you're a professional bowler, that's awesome. But he was like, if you're saying, hey, I've got to like take the sweat off my hand or like blow my hand from sweat because I've rolled the ball too much, then you're probably a professional bowler. And so anyway, and he was also saying bowling is the only sport that you can play professionally and be like, hang on, let me go eat some nachos in between my, in between my activity. You don't do that in tennis, right? Or any other sport. So
and smoke a pack of cigarettes, right?
So, we've all seen Kingpin, so it's good stuff. Good stuff. Awesome, man. Well, good to go. Well, hey, man, we have got two amazing people here today. Talking about some amazing content. They're on the F5 Labs team, and there is this report that just came out about credential stuffing. So for those of you who have never heard about credential stuffing, guess what? You're about to hear about it today and how important it is to protect against this stuff. It's a big problem out there. So anyway, good stuff. So Jason, maybe, and actually really quick, I'm seeing a couple other comments out there. I got to say this, man. Jen Woodbury, it is good to see you out there. Well, I guess we don't really see you, but you're out there. You're talking to us, and it's awesome that you're in this little chat. So, man, I tell you what, Jen Woodbury is like the greatest, coach in the world when it comes to presentation and all that stuff. So, man, the bar has been raised on this thing. So good stuff. Awesome. Need to see these experts in action. Good to go, man. All right. Well, hey, so maybe we bring on these two, speaking of experts, these two experts in credential stuffing, and we just drop some truth bombs on everybody's face today, and they're never going to be the same, right, Jason?
That's right. Let's do it.
All right, man. So we got Mr. Sander Vinberg and we got Mr. Dan Woods. Sander, I'll start with you. A little intro time on the F5 Labs team, credential stuffing expert and author extraordinaire, and maybe best known for your expertise in brewing the beer, right? The home brew. Tell us about that, man.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. After the brewing year that I just had, I can't claim any titles at all. It's just been like a disaster after disaster. One of my colleagues actually before lockdown, like this was October 2019, came over. He was in town. He was like, show me what brewing's all about. We made this really cool beer. It was just getting good. It needed a little bit of age. And then I screwed up and the 5 gallons of it all leaked out. It was all ruined. Then I was cleaning that up, and you use a temperature sensor in a freezer to keep it from actually freezing. I took the temperature sensor out while I was cleaning up all my spilled beer and froze 10 more gallons of beer. And
is that like a beer slushy at that point, Sander?
It was like a solid block. I'm actually really lucky it didn't break the glass that it was in, but it was, and I was like, maybe this beer will still be good afterwards, but it was totally gross. I don't pour a lot of beer down the sink, but I poured that frozen beer down the sink. So I'm not an expert brewer. I'm like an enthusiastic amateur brewer. I feel like it's been just accident after accident. I just finished a good beer for the first time in like 18 months. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
If at first you spill and freeze, then try again, right? And you just did it, and now you got a good one, right?
It is supremely satisfying to make your own beer and keg it and pull your own beer from a tap and drink it. It's really, really satisfying when it works. And it actually
tastes good. I just, for whatever reason, I had like this picture in my mind of you at like a gas station, convenience station, with one of those icy machines, the slushy, with the frozen beer coming out. So maybe that'll be a thing one day. I don't know. But yeah, good stuff, man. Well, hey, it's great to have you here today. And we also have the man himself, Mr. Dan Woods, who some may claim has been to the moon, but I don't think that's actually true. But Dan, in real life, he's the vice president of Shape Intelligence Center, which, Dan, that just sounds sophisticated, man. We could stop right there, but not to be outdone with himself, spent 20 years with local, state, and federal law enforcement in intelligence organizations like the FBI and CIA. So he's got all the secrets. Dan, it's good to have you, man.
It's great to be here. I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed. I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. I can quote any episode, and I didn't immediately recognize that Jason's background was Seinfeld's apartment.
Right, well, what you're focusing on. You were focusing on the amazing thing going on here, and not what was going on behind me.
I'm just not on my A game right now, so I hope I can recover.
Yeah, Dan, don't be embarrassed. When Jason Rom's face is on the screen, there's hardly anything else you can look at. So we all forgive you.
Joke, John.
We all forgive you. No, that was not. I'm talking about the beauty of your mug, my man. The beauty. Hey, so Dan, for extra points, I don't know if you can see it in that shot, but if you could find the Superman in that shot, then bonus point. I don't even know if there is one, but wasn't that a thing, Dan, in all the Seinfeld shows?
Yeah, he liked his superheroes,
Yeah.
but no, I can't see it. It's
There's,
too small.
Yeah.
I think Jason's head is in the way.
Probably.
Give us a little head duck and jive. That's awesome, man. Well, good stuff, guys. Well, great to have you guys here today. I see one other comment down there from Dawn Berry. She said, Sander, there is no recovery for frozen beer. So I guess, I mean, you did say that you redeemed yourself. You made good stuff, but I guess frozen beer is one of those, how do you possibly come back from that one, right?
No, yeah, it was two 5-gallon batches, both ruined because of like one little stupid mistake. So yeah, I'm like, I have to redeem myself. If 2021, if I can make 4 or 5 good batches this year, maybe I'll start counting myself like a halfway decent brewer again. That's awesome.
Well, hey, you did it, and yeah, you'll probably never make that mistake again, though, right?
Probably never will. Yeah.
There you go. You lived and you learned.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome, man. Well, hey, so we wanted to talk about the Credential Stuffing Report that you guys just released, and kind of dig into that a little bit. Like, what is credential stuffing? What were some of the key findings? So maybe Sandra, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about the purpose of the project. Like, what motivated this report and all that?
Yeah, so this project, this used to be an annual report that Shape put out based on what they were seeing in terms of credential abuse around the industry. And then for various reasons, it got put on hold in 2018 and it got put on hold in 2019. And rather than just sort of give up and shelve that project, what we did was we just kept on collecting data and sort of looking at how we were learning more, and it was changing our assumptions. And what we came out with instead of an annual report was this 3-year report. And with the 2 previous ones, we ended up having 5 years of being able to actually do a pretty long time series analysis of what was going on around the entire cred stuffing ecosystem. And that's the other part of it, is that this report, and this is what I think is so cool about it, is that it doesn't just talk about people stealing creds and then the story ends. And it doesn't just talk about people taking those creds and using them to steal other stuff for in account takeover attacks. It shows how these 2 things are 2 sides of the same coin, right? And so it's like people, usually more sophisticated attackers, break into networks, steal encrypted or hash password dumps, break them, sell them online, but not first without using them. And that, like, it's most of the time you get kind of one or the other. And this report really could sort of be 2 or 3 separate research projects. There's a ton of stuff here, and not all of it was really my baby. There are a lot of really, really smart folks working behind the scenes, collecting this data and analyzing it. And so what we have really is part 1 is just an analysis of a lot of open source intelligence about when credentials get stolen, when they are actually discovered on the dark web, how many are being stolen at one time. And that gives us a kind of sense of how attacker techniques in terms of getting these things are evolving. Section 2 is this really remarkable project of sort of tracing the use of stolen credentials before they're discovered on the dark web, and kind of what the patterns of use by different kind of actors really looks like. The 3rd section is a pretty detailed rundown of attacker tools for credential stuffing, and it really shows how easy it is. And then section 4 wraps up with a lot of recommendations about how you can start to control the risk around these things. So there's a ton of information there. It's something that I'm proud of the report, not necessarily so much just the work that I did. I'm proud that our team, that Shape and F5 Labs together, were able to put out something that is like such a definitive statement about what I consider to be one of the top problems in the field.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And so, yeah, it really opened your eyes to like, what is this? And so for those of us, I'm sure we've all heard the term credential stuffing, but effectively, and correct me if I'm wrong, but effectively it's where the bad guys steal your credentials. So let's say John Wagnon has a username and password on my old AOL.com, email site, right? Yeah. Whatever. And then because I'm lazy, I use the same login, username and password on my Gmail account or on my Netflix account or whatever, right? And so then people will steal that. Maybe they'll hack into the old AOL stuff, and they'll steal my username and my password from AOL. But then they're like, you know what? I bet Wagnon uses that same stuff on Netflix. And sure enough, I do. Actually, I don't really in real life. But then they'll take those same credentials and they'll stuff them into Netflix, and lo and behold, they're in, right?
Yep.
Is that kind of the essence of it, or is there more to it than that? What do you think?
I would say that's the essence of it, and it can vary based on the platform that people are trying to attack, and it can sort of take different forms. The fact is that most people's personal mail right now is sort of their account management home base, right? And so getting those kinds of creds is valuable, not just for financial fraud and stuff like that, but also for disinformation campaigns, using access to the email to create fake social media accounts, that sort of thing. So it can actually go in quite a wide range of directions. And like it can be really simple, such as defrauding loyalty referral things. So it's like you refer a friend and you get $10 gift card at a food retailer or something. Defrauding that sort of thing to get tons and tons of free credits. It can be as simple as that, or it can be as advanced as using a set of credentials in a very, very targeted attack against an individual person. So runs the gamut, really.
Yeah, wide spectrum.
That's an interesting point, because I've always thought that the main and maybe the only target would be financial, but to think about disinformation campaigns and all that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And if someone steals my Starbucks reward points, then so help me, right? But that's a big thing, some of those reward kind of points, whether it's airline flights or coffee or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, awesome. So Dan, I know your expertise is that of the kind of the part of an application that is supposed to be out there working and all that, and then people take advantage of the stuff that is out there, that's designed to be accessed like a login and password field, right? As opposed to, hey, I'm going to send some kind of nefarious, HTTP request in like a cross-site script or a SQL injection or something like that, right? So in the context of credential stuffing, for me personally, I think about like the username and password field of a web page, some web form or whatever. Are there other areas that people, come after in the context of credential stuffing, or maybe help us understand, what they're going after on all these things?
Sure. I like to think of it as inherent vulnerabilities versus inadvertent vulnerabilities. Inadvertent vulnerabilities are those that can be patched, like the cross-site scripting, SQL injection, those sorts of things. The inherent vulnerabilities can't be patched because they result from a critical business requirement. Like you could take down your login page, and then you would not be vulnerable to credential stuffing, but that doesn't seem like a good thing for many, many companies. So it's really abusing applications' intended use, right? That's what credential stuffing is. But a lot of people think that's the only inherent vulnerability, but it's not. I don't know if this was covered in the report, but the typical login success rate for a credential stuffing attack is anywhere from 0.1 to 3%. And these are, by the way, we're seeing them in the millions, hundreds of millions, and even in the billions in size. So when you're trying that many username password pairs, a 0.1 to 3% login success rate starts to compromise a lot of accounts. But it isn't just login. It's forgot password. If it gives feedback to the attacker to let them know whether or not the account exists, you're going to see automated attacks against the forgot password application, against the create account application, against the check gift card balance. Virtually every vertical is impacted for all those public-facing applications.
Wow. Yeah, that's great to think about. So are there things that you could do if you're an application developer? I've heard people say stuff like, hey, on the forgot password, for example, or even if you log in, like, hey, I put in a bad username and password, rather than saying, hey, that was the wrong email address or that was the wrong password but valid email, don't give so much information on the little error page, right? So that's a little thing you can do. But what are some other little things that maybe you could think about?
I think they've largely got it right on the response to login. I'm not seeing many login applications respond and saying, username was right, your password was wrong. Normally they're doing that right. Forgot password, though, I do see a lot that we have no record of that email address. and they're going to be vulnerable to account enumeration attacks. So the correct feedback, obviously, is we received a request, we sent an email to the email, and with instructions on how to reset your password. So that wouldn't be vulnerable to an account enumeration attack, but it does create some friction. Think about how many email accounts that we have. If I created an account at some retailer 5-6 years ago, I might not remember the email address I used. And if I'm putting in one of my email addresses and it says it sent me an email and it didn't, because I'm using the wrong email, that can create some friction. But with somebody like F5 Shape protecting that application, then you can give very clear, unambiguous feedback, and you wouldn't be vulnerable to the attack.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point, that if you use things like Shape, then you can give more clear feedback. Because let's be honest, Dan, I not only do I not remember what email I used for my whatever account 5 years ago, I don't remember what I ate for dinner last night. So it's going to be hard, which email address. And yeah, I know that this is not in the scope of the credential stuffing, but it's like, I wonder how many on average email addresses do people have? It's got to be, I don't even know. I mean, I look at me, I can think of 4 right off the top of my head. So it could be any of them, right?
Yeah, I think
personally, I try to maintain 3. It's like I've got my work one, I've got a personal one that's like personal with friends, and then I've got I'm doing e-commerce, so I get all the spam mail and all that goes to that third one that I don't really have to check. Right?
Yeah. Good to go. Were you gonna say something too, Dan?
Just that my practice is you get a domain and then you have a catch-all, and you could just make up email addresses on the fly. Just put any number of letters and letters and numbers at that domain you own, and it's going to be a valid email. You just put it in a catch-all.
I gotcha. Yeah, what a great tip.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
that's a great idea. Fantastic. We just need to go get those domains. So good stuff.
I feel like I should leave the meeting now on a high note, like Costanza.
Man, that's right, George Costanza. Man, we could go off a little Seinfeld tangent with some George Costanza stories. That's fantastic, awesome, man. Well, good stuff. Well, so Sandra, I know you talked about like some of the different stages of credential stuffing. Some of the conclusions that you guys drew. One of the things that was fascinating to me is that it seems to me, and you can correct all this or give some more clarity around this. It seems like maybe the life cycle of the credential stuffing is that you've got these bad guys out there stealing the credentials, and then they're going to kind of use this, they're going to kind of mess around with them and sort of float them out there here and there, but not like this flood just yet. But then the credentials they're going to make their way onto the dark web, and then they're going to, be picked up by other attackers. Then they're going to start flooding. And then, it goes on and on from there until finally there's like this, I think you used the word reincarnation, which is always fun, Mm-hmm. So maybe help us understand kind of that whole, life cycle.
Yeah. I think this is one of those things that's easier to just show with some images. So we've actually got sort of a breakdown of what the entire life cycle looks like from the moment it starts getting, from the moment those creds are stolen and they start getting used by the original attackers, and then the way that kind of spreads.
Mm-hmm. You want to pull up that graph real quick?
Yeah. So
awesome. Okay.
What this is, this thing is a little bit confusing. So I'm going to kind of start a little context here, but that line right in the middle that says days since announcement, that is the moment when the victim organization finds out that people are sharing their creds on the internet. And that's the moment when they announce and say, hey, we've had a breach.
Gotcha.
And so that's not days from the attack. That's days from when they find out that they've already successfully been breached, right? And so the point here is that the most of the time detection of these kinds of breaches is unfortunately pretty bad, right? So after the actual breach event has happened, but before anybody's wise about it, there's this amazing window for the original attackers. It's usually a very small number of sophisticated folks, and the word's not out. So they can use these things and usually exploit them to get as much money as they can. And because these guys are savvy, they don't give themselves away, right? So this is sort of like the low and slow stealthy attack pattern, right? Mm. And then at a certain point, these folks who all don't necessarily trust each other, they sort of realize that word is getting out among the slightly broader community, and people are saying, oh man, they have these creds and they're actually succeeding. And so in order to preempt their own business partners sharing it with other folks, they end up sharing it. So it's kind of this like chaotic, anarchistic thing, right? And so as the credentials become a little bit more widespread, we get into this ramp up phase, right? And then you can see what this graph, I'm sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself. What this graph actually shows is attack volume. And this was part of that whole tracing project that I alluded to earlier, so that we took a number of credentials that were known to have been breached and traced their use against a number of Shape customers. And this was the outcome, right? So at a certain point, when the word starts to get around that community that there's this set of creds that are still good and nobody's reset their passwords yet, more and more people start to use them. And so that's what this ramp up is in traffic. But inevitably, the word gets around, you can't keep a secret, right? And so that's usually what ends up resulting in either a dark web monitoring service or something like that. Somebody saying, hey, there's a huge pile of creds out there that people are using for this purpose. And so then the organization is tipped off, and then the organization announces. And from there, it's only a matter of time before most folks are going to go change their password, right? You get that annoying letter in the mail with the offer for credit monitoring, all that, right? And then so once the word is out and the announcement's released, that's day zero as far as the organization is concerned. But the attackers have been partying for a quarter, right? So at this point, it's just a total free for all, and everybody. And at this point, we're like way down the ladder of sophistication. We've got kind of anybody on the dark web who can get their hands on these things is just not just going after the original target. They're spraying these things, this combination of username password against whatever target they can think of. And that's when you get this huge blitz. At this point, the sophisticated people are kind of long gone, right? The secret's out. It's no good anymore. And eventually everyone changes their password, or everything that is there within those accounts to be stolen has already been stolen, right? So then you get this kind of long ramp down, and it kind of settles into a new equilibrium. But one of the interesting things about it is that there will always be somebody who's just kind of getting into this, some total beginner who's going to keep trying those creds a little bit. So we notice that across all these targets where we're tracing the creds, that the equilibrium was always a little bit higher in this stage 4 than it was in the very beginning when the original attackers were going low and slow, right? So there's this kind of whole arc where you have pre-discovery, sophisticated attackers, and then it sort of disseminates to a wider and wider part of the attacker community. And then inevitably, cover gets blown, the opportunity's gone. And then the reincarnation stage is after this. Eventually somebody in that community is going to take all these passwords, rebundle them up, and either try to resell them again as another collection, trade them for something else of value within the cybercrime community. And this goes back to what we were talking about 10 minutes ago about password reuse, right? So it's like that combo, that username password against a given target, that might not be good anymore. But a good attacker knows that most of us just sort of increment our passwords by 1 or whatever. We have all these stupid rules that help us remember, but are actually extremely easy for machines to exploit. And so the fact that we all reuse our password is what makes that reincarnation stage still viable for attackers. So this whole life cycle thing, I think this is so cool. This is the first time I've ever seen anything like this in the field.
Hey, Sandra, could you go back to the phase 1?
Whoops. There we are.
Yeah, there we go. I just want to reiterate the implication of this. Many of you probably know that, NIST and others recommend that you kind of mine the dark web for credentials, and then you can check your customers' credentials against those in this corpus from dark web, and keep them from, using them, keep them from creating new accounts with them. Well, what Sanders describing here is during that period there, stage 1, it's not on the dark web. So it isn't enough just to mine the dark web for these spilled credentials. So at Shape, a lot of the intelligence we glean are from the currently exploited credentials. During this phase 1, they are launching credential stuffing attacks against the Shape network. So we're able to get early insight into what credentials are spilled well before they wind up in the dark web. I think that's a very important point to reiterate.
Yeah. And one of the recommendations in the report was to facilitate intelligence sharing among organizations to the greatest degree possible. And again, the fact that Shape was able to trace these combinations across these 4 different targets, that's really rare, right? Like so often in our field, we're all sort of sitting in our own bunker, waiting for the attacks to come, or not waiting because they actually come constantly, but waiting for the good attacks to come. And we're always kind of left being like, what's it going to be? When's it going to happen? What's the vector going to be? And the fact that we were even able to do this project really shows how important it is that people can start to share intel and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. These combos are showing up again and again and again, because we all reuse accounts. Like we all reuse our personal email as the username, and then we all reuse passwords because passwords are stupid and hard to remember.
And Sander, it's not enough that if my old password was whatever, my new password, I can't just throw an exclamation point on the end and be good to go, right?
You know, that will actually weed out the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, like that phase 4 group over there, right?
Yeah, these guys, the exclamation point might throw them for a loop. But there's a practice known as fuzzing. Which is essentially trying all the logical variations that you might find, right? So if my password was Sander01, and that failed because I was clever enough to change it or whatever, then an attacker might come and it might be capital S Sander01, or it might be Sander02, or it might be Sander1 without the O, blah, 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 right? That's fuzzing.
Or adding the leap speak in there and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I changed out a number for a letter. So fuzzing is very common among the more advanced side of the spectrum. And especially given that a lot of these sorts of things are automated and have to happen at scale in order to be profitable, the fuzzing needs to be factored into the logic of the tooling that they're using for these kinds of things, right? So you might weed out the I think the term we use in the report is the fraud noobsters, but you're not going to stop the folks that really know what they're doing and have been carrying out these kinds of attacks successfully for a long time.
Yeah, who arguably are more dangerous, right? But yeah, good to go. Jason, you had something?
On the tooling front. So we know these tools exist for the attackers. For the organizations that want to check against the same tools to say, hey, is this in a table? Is this in the top 500 of the most easily guessed passwords? Outside of plugins for like Active Directory, is that where organizations are heading to, or is there some kind of a middleware? Like I have a pre-commit check for my software, so if I've messed something up, it actually doesn't do a git commit, and it says, hey, you've got to fix this first, so I don't end up with like 15 commits fixing stupid stuff. Is there stuff like that for if I'm a user in an organization, I want to set my password and I set it to password 01? Obviously, that's a very simple example, but if Active Directory isn't set or capable of being set to weed out those kinds of things, what tools are available to be able to validate passwords before they actually become a credential in the system?
I don't know, and it's partly like it's possible that there are tons of off-the-shelf tools that do exactly that. I'm not familiar enough with those tools to say this one's good, this one's bad. I know that there are plenty of organizations that hard code that sort of stuff into their authentication logic, so I know it can be done. And actually, one of the things that we recommended was kind of carrying out a similar sort of thing, but not at code level, just at the user experience level by when someone creates an account, one of our recommendations was show them a list of the 10 or 20 most common passwords. And a lot of folks are going to look at that list and be like, oops, ooh, yeah, number 4 and 6 and 11, those are my, oh, damn it. So making people aware isn't going to solve the entire problem, but it is going to cut the risk in a very, very low cost way. So I would say anywhere that you can sort of interrupt that process by which we all put bad passwords into play, whether that happens at the level of the consciousness of the user or if that's happening in logic in the application, that's all good, because at the end of the day, it's password reuse and weak passwords that is making so much of this stuff possible.
Yeah.
I was at a round table just a few months ago, and one of the members, CISO, had the idea that you would just measure the entropy and show them a strength meter. And if they reached a certain strength, then they got some, I don't know, a free cup of coffee or some loyalty points, or they got some benefit, some discount, some coupon. I thought it was a great idea. And I don't know why we don't see it more often. Right now, they have these composition rules, which are a terrible idea.
Yeah.
They're making people, come up with, frankly, weaker and more difficult to remember passwords, when they should be encouraging everybody to use a password manager and use, 30 character long passwords that you don't have to know. You just copy and paste them into the password field.
Right.
Prior to Shape, I was like most people. I reused, a couple of really, really strong passwords. Not anymore. Every one of my passwords are very, very long and strong, generated by a password manager. And there's one more trick that everybody can do. Once you have the password that is generated by a password manager, then just add just a few characters to the end of it. Because then, even if the password manager is compromised, none of your passwords are compromised. So yeah, I'd love that idea when the CISO mentioned it. I don't know why we don't see it more often. It's kind of like when you see insurance companies offer discounts for safe driving.
Yeah,
it'd be the same sort of thing.
Right, and it's funny to see, like, it's rare when the economic thinking like really comes full circle, and somebody thinks it is cheaper for us to buy every single one of our customers a free cup of coffee than it is to go through a data breach like that. I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. In fact, if you're looking for a really good implementation, go to bestbuy.com and just go to create an account and look at the coaching it gives you on how to create a strong password and the password strength meter. It's quite good. It's what I refer everybody to if they want to see an example of something done right. Although they're not giving discounts for. I mean, if I'd make it 100 characters if I got a free flat screen TV.
Yeah, because at that point, what do you care, right, Dan? You're letting the password manager do the hard work for you, right?
Exactly. Although occasionally I come across a login where they don't allow pasting into the password field. Mm-hmm. And that's a pain when you have to type a 30-character password that is really strong. I found myself having to type it into a text editor so I can, make sure it's right. It's a real pain, a lot of friction.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you get into some fonts, you completely lose is it a 1? Is it an L?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I've actually noticed password managers are starting to work less well with the authentication logic in a handful of like really big sites. And it's annoying, right? Because I've been using password manager for 2 years. And it used to be a lot smoother than it is. And now I actually have to like click a thing and move stuff around, and it's a drag. And I don't know what's going on there, if the browser extension is getting buggy or if people are changing up their applications because they don't want people to use the managers. I don't know, but it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one I use it's been a little bit buggy lately, but also the sites are changing the way they do logins, where they'll ask for like your username on one page and then your password on the next page. And then some of my other sites, it's like you also, like I never put on my financial sites, I never put in I trust this computer, because I don't want to trust my computer with my financial sites just in case my computer's compromised. And so every single time it's username, then password, then PIN, then some kind of thing I know from my childhood. And so it's like 4 pieces of information. Well, the password managers struggle with that many steps.
The good news, I mean, I'm in the same boat, and I find myself, I feel like I spend a tenth of my day authenticating to things these days. But the good news is it makes using the computer less fun, which means I get more time back to do other stuff. So I'm getting more done around the house. Nice.
There's always a silver lining, Sander.
More time to brew, right?
No, yeah. Go. Turn the chiller down on that beer brew. Good stuff, man. Hey, really quick, I was going to pop up a couple of comments here. RTFMOZ, and that put it right over my face. I'm still here, everybody. So true. How do you be?
Not a cat.
That's right. So, bam, there I'm back. So RTFM Oz is. I think we kind of mentioned that with some of the password manager. Dan, I love the I love the little comment about let the password manager do all the hard work, and then you put a couple of characters at the end. That way, it's just even more safe. Then all you have to do is remember like 3 or 4 characters. So that's a great thing. And so I think we've kind of hit on that. So hopefully RTFM Oz, that's some good pointers. Kevin, go ahead, Sandra.
If you really want to add another layer of protection, but it'll also add another layer of friction, is you can use a hardware MFA token, like a YubiKey or something like that. Yeah. And that's what I use. I don't use it because I feel that the risk is that great. I use it as a sort of experiment on myself to see what it feels like to have that much security. I can tell you it's pretty annoying. The friction is enormous. So it's really a matter of kind of what the cost and the benefit is to you. If it is a social media thing and all you do is you sort of check out memes on social media, it's probably not that important. I keep it in front of financial organizations, work stuff, personal high impact email, stuff like that. So it's definitely there. You can definitely put those controls in place, but the UX is definitely going to suffer.
Yeah. So for all you kids out there who are studying ratios, security and convenience are indirectly proportional.
Oh, nice. We got an indirect proportion reference from Dr. Ram. I love it, man. I think we've arrived here at DevCentral Connects. Good to go. Hey, so Kevin Davies had a couple of comments here. Kevin Davies, one of our DevCentral MVPs. So appreciate him hanging out there with us today. It's good to see you, man. He said actually a few things. He's like, hey, I've thought the domain and unique email, every time I register, I could weed out is knowing even useful anymore. So he's at that place of despair, Don't lose heart, Kevin Davies. Don't lose heart. Is it even worth it anymore, right? And then he said again, he was like, hey, try to combat password reuse. Yet it tells me that 45 logins are using the same password. So
I think that's an SSO error. I get the single sign-on. I get similar things. Yeah. It's telling me that I'm reusing a password in multiple locations when I know for a fact that I'm not. And I think it's because of shared authorization from an identity provider plus federation and SSO. So trust your gut on that and don't let the password manager boss you around.
Nice.
Yeah, some of the password managers have separate vaults. And so you can keep things that do SSO in a different vault, and then you don't get those warnings in your other stuff.
Ooh, that's fancy.
Nice, sophisticated. And then he also had another one where he said, hey, what are your thoughts? Maybe I'll throw this out there if anyone has thoughts here. Apple's effort to not give you real email for a login, they provide something for you. Apple says, here, why don't we give you the login? Frankly, I'm not familiar with that specifically personally. Has anyone seen that?
I use Apple products all the time, and I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
I don't think I'd like it very much, them telling me what to use, unless they were also going to remember it for me.
Right.
Yeah, actually, one of the, I do think that it's great to move away from using our emails and use because the thing is, if you're using a password manager anyway, you're not going to remember the password, which means you don't have to remember anything, which means you might as well have a 30-character random string for your username as well. So I'm actually, again, I don't want to just make this into a feature of my paranoia, but for really sensitive targets, I'm actually using super long random strings for username and password as much as possible, and also for security questions. The answers are not about my cat and my first school. The answers are random strings.
Because they don't actually know, Standard. They don't know what your cat's first name was, right? It could be not. 50 characters long. They don't know. It's good stuff.
Yeah, NIST recommends you against the knowledge-based authentication, yet we still continue to see it all the time.
Yeah.
But what Sanders saying is a good idea. I usually put some equivalent of a password as answers to that. And then what frustrates me is sometimes they tell me your answer's too long. I'm thinking, what do you mean? Not only do I have to answer it, but I have to answer it with a certain length.
That's crazy. Yeah. So the entropy.
Sandra, my question is, when you're filling out the Facebook questionnaires, are you using the 30-character string for your cat name?
To find out what transformer character I am or whatever.
Nice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I never want anyone to find out what my transformer character is.
No doubt. I love that. No, these are all great practical tips, because it's like, most people, would think, hey, if I put in a username, I have to put in my username, right? Or a password. I need to come up with a password. You don't have, your username could be whatever it wants.
Yeah.
Except for what Dan was saying, your cat's name must be no more than 10 characters,
right.
And whatever, right? It can't have special characters in it.
Yeah, and I mean, it sucks that we have to kind of hack the web applications that we're trying to use to protect ourselves. But that's kind of where we're at right now, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, like everything we're talking about here is steps that we are having to take to avoid getting caught up in someone else's security problem, which I think shows it more than anything else, like how big a problem this really is. And the way that these marketplaces work, this really allows a huge number of attackers to profit from the skill and ingenuity of a very small number of advanced attackers, right? So that's a big part of why we're looking at this problem. And that one of the theses of the report was that this is a problem that's like kind of borderline running away from us, getting out of control. And we really need to implement the sort of next generation controls around this in a widespread way, right? Because it's not like one organization is going to solve this by themselves.
No.
Well, F5 Shape will.
Right. Sorry, one customer organization like Starbucks and Facebook and no, of course, like the Shape controls are amazing, and like I said, a lot of this stuff would never have been possible if it wasn't for a lot of these sort of inter-target telemetry that Shape was collecting. But it's a collective problem, unfortunately.
So Dan, to that point, maybe tell those who have not really, looked at the details of what Shape does from a broad perspective with respect to this topic. I know you talked about when Sander was showing that chart earlier, and like the really sophisticated attackers are kind of low and slow. They're using these credentials. No one else even knows about them. But you're saying Shape can start to collect, some intelligence about that. So so as Shape sits in front of a web application to protect it, inherently, it's obviously protecting from a lot of this credential stuffing attack. So maybe help us understand, like maybe a little bit of high level how that works, if that's all right.
Well, yeah, sure. We just inject some JavaScript that collects a lot of signals. We have an SDK that sits alongside a native app as well to collect signals from the devices, mobile devices. Passes all those signals through one of our appliances, and we analyze those signals and make a real-time decision whether or not it's good or bad. If it's bad, we take some mitigating action. If it's good, we strip off the payload and pass it to origin. So the good traffic reaches origin, the bad traffic doesn't. But I should highlight that not all countermeasures are perfect. Even with Shape inline, deploying its signals and taking mitigating action, there will be some malicious traffic getting past Shape, which is why it's important to have a second stage where you have your AI and ML systems that are monitored by humans. You got to have the carbon units, dozens of them, poring over those alerts, making sure there are no false positives or false negatives. But once you find malicious traffic, then you need the ability to update your real-time defenses. And that's what Shape offers its customers, an outcome of a service. We just keep updating stage one as we find, malicious traffic in our retrospective, what we call stage two. And that just continues into perpetuity. And as a result of this, we have literally billions of transactions flowing through Shape every day. And so what my team does is we're a bunch of data scientists and analysts, investigators who just pore over that data, looking for interesting insights like, huge attacks or new monetization schemes or new tools, those sorts of things. So that's kind of what Shape, in the beginning, by the way, we were all about bot, no bot. Okay. Is it human or not?
Right.
But then the signals evolved, they got quite good. Now we're like studying how the environment does floating point math and drawing conclusions based on that. And now our signals have become so good, we're able to tell good humans from bad humans. And then even for the good humans, we're able to take steps to minimize the friction for those user experiences. So we're excited about the evolution of our signal collection and the way it's been helping to not only improve security, but improve user experience.
Fantastic.
That's really awesome.
That's super sophisticated. It's exciting too. And one thing, correct me if I'm wrong too, but as Shape, as you guys collect all of this intelligence, you mentioned billions, is that right? Of data points coming through like every day or whatever it is. It's like tons of this stuff. So if I am an attacker and I'm going after this target that maybe hasn't even been touched yet Shape is in front of it, and I'm using, a certain credential stuffing attack or whatever it is, Shape can take the intelligence that it has gained from other known attacks over here and implement that on this one and say, hey, maybe we haven't seen that exact, credential before, but because of the intelligence we've gained, overall, we can make decisions to help protect it.
Yeah, actually, our general countermeasures will block 99% of those attacks.
Okay.
It's a small percent, like 1% that are the truly sophisticated, maybe state actors or criminal organizations, or just maybe a brilliant attacker. Those are the ones we'll do battle with, but in the end, we prevail.
Nice.
We wear them out. We make it just too expensive for them, and they just move on to a softer target.
Nice. And I mean, that's kind of I kind of had that thought just as we were talking about using the crazy long usernames and passwords and all that. A bit of this is, it's like you and your buddy getting chased by the bear. You don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your buddy, right? So you be the harder target than the next guy. Although we should all practice good security practices, right?
Sure. One wrinkle to that is occasionally we'll have an attacker who can't move on to a softer target because perhaps their scheme, their expertise relies on something at the victim organization. So we do battle with them, and they don't move on to another tax collection agency because they're kind of stuck with the tax collection agency they've been targeting. But that's pretty rare. Usually, we can just force these criminal organizations off to a softer target.
Yeah.
This is a kind of out of the scope of the original cred stuffing thing, but the other danger with that is you might also force an attacker to stop attacking the front of your application, instead find a software dependency, a vendor that is providing a service that has now been integrated into your environment, and they might compromise that and actually do a lot more damage that way. And that's something that in other research in the last year, I've been seeing more of. Obviously, the SolarWinds thing we just saw will probably for the foreseeable future be the quintessential supply chain attack, but a lot of mage card stuff is going that way. People are compromising one e-commerce platform and using that to steal from all of their customers at once. So you're absolutely right. You only have to outrun them, but you got to kind of outrun them in 4 dimensions at the same time. So it's
I have an anecdote that reiterates Sanders' point. We went in line with a large, top 3 telecommunications company in the U.S., and we're in observation mode. So we're just flagging and passing to origin, and we're seeing 98% automated attack traffic on login. So that was jaw-dropping for the CISO, who had expected to see 20 to 30% automated attack traffic. And then we warned the CISO. We said, look, when we go into mitigation mode, all of these attackers, they're going to maybe try to retool once or twice unsuccessfully, but then they're going to move to your mobile API. And if your mobile API can't handle this volume of traffic, then you shouldn't go into mitigation mode until you've deployed the Shape SDK to protect the mobile API. And he said, no, it's okay. Let's go into mitigation mode. We went into mitigation mode. A couple of days later, he says, go back into observation mode. They're tipping over our mobile API. And later at a customer summit, I reminded him of this conversation. And he goes, I know you told me they would, but you didn't use knife hands. That's what he told me. If I used knife hands or power thumbs, it would have been more convincing.
That's awesome. Yeah, a little bit of I told you so. But that's a great point, though, that as these attackers, they can become so persistent that they're like, all right, if this one's not good, I'm going to move to something else. And yeah, to your point, Dan, it's like in this same organization, if I can't hit this one, I'm going to hit their mobile, API or whatever.
Yeah, the point is the softer target is sometimes at the same organization.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So harden the whole thing. Yeah, what a great point. What a great point. So awesome. Pasilva had a quick question. I know we're kind of getting a little low on time here as well, but I just want to throw this one out there. If you force them off, so now you've kind of, you've been successful at this one place, do they show up on another site with the same tools? So basically, I think the heart of this, what Pasilva, our good buddy out there, is saying is, do the attackers tend to use the same tools over and over, or do they have like this vast array of tool capabilities?
Vast array of tools, but we do see the same tools used across multiple sites. As soon as we go into mitigation mode, they might try a couple of things. The first thing they do is they change their IPs, like they think we're blocking them based on IP or region or ASN. But then they'll go to another one of our customers and try it with the same tool. We saw, if you read the report, you'll see references to Phantom JS. That was very popular prior to headless browsers coming out. But yeah, we see Selenium, MIT Sakuli. We see all sorts of the same tools being used. But oftentimes they're custom. They're just a puppeteer kind of custom tailored tool that is for an organization. And what's also fun is monitoring the dark web chatter of these attackers. I remember we went in line at one organization and the dark web chatter says, "Oh no, it's Shape," and we love to hear that.
Oh man, yeah, that's just like you're just eating popcorn, right? Just having,
yes,
that's
exactly.
awesome.
That reminds me of some of those like eye drop commercials, or decongestant commercials, like the little, the little bad, antibodies or whatever, saying, "Oh no, it's the eye drop that I can't cause irritation and itch anymore." So
yeah. There was one guy selling what he's representing as a Shape defeat, and it was like $10,000, and a couple people fell for it and bought it, and it didn't work. And then within a couple of weeks, he was banned from the forum. So those were also fun things to see.
That's awesome.
But banned from the forum with $20,000.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed.
But he also probably had to like flee to Thailand or somewhere else, right? It's like when the Gantt crowd guy disappeared, the guy who was running this kind of amazing pyramid scheme of ransomware. When he finally went offline, it was like he disappeared, and he is thought to be holed up somewhere in Southeast Asia with a couple $1 billion or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't lose too much sleep over criminals stealing from criminals.
No.
Yeah. There's no honor among thieves kind of thing. So kids out there, crime still does not pay. Don't do this stuff. And also know that we, the collective we, the good guys, are hanging out in those bad guy forums anyway. So we're kind of watching all kinds of stuff, right?
I will say on the subject of tooling though, that just as with everything else, right? There's lots of levels to it, and there's a big section in the report that kind of shows how it starts with trying to simulate traffic at the HTTP level. And then when that no longer succeeds, then they step up and they try to simulate a browser. And that's where we get the puppeteer and the headless stuff. And then they go to simulating actual human behavior. And that's where some of Shape's more leading edge work has really sort of raised the bar there. So for anybody that's interested in what the back end of a cred stuffing campaign looks like, they should check that section out, because there's a ton of detail in there that we haven't even scratched here.
Nice. It's a page turner, man. It's just full of goodness, page after page, right? Sandra was one of the primary authors of this piece, so appreciate your work on that, Sandra.
It was a pleasure, and it is a bit of a tome. I've had 3 or 4 colleagues come to me and say, "Oh, I've started it, but I haven't finished it yet." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's normal, because it's a doozy." But like I said, it could have been a couple different reports. I think it's so cool that it's just all there as a single source of comparative truth.
Nice. Maybe as the ultimate combination, you could sit down with the Credential Stuffing Report written by Sander Vinberg and enjoy a cold beverage, a cold home brew brewed by Sander Vinberg, and you would just be in this ultimate paradise moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Once a pandemic is done, maybe I'll have put a couple bar stools on the front porch and you just swing by, and I will tell people extremely boring stories while they drink my homebrew.
I love it. Well, good to go, guys. Well, hey, yep. That's awesome. Well, hey, I know we are just about out of time. We say this every time, and I guess it's true, but time flies on these things. I love them. Just kind of talking and getting all the great. This has been an amazing time. But we wanted to give you guys just a quick moment, any kind of last thoughts. So maybe Sander, we'll start with you, and then Dan, give you a final word if you guys have anything you wanted to say here at the end.
Oh man, where to start? I mean, there's honestly a ton of detail in there that we haven't scratched about kind of what these different incidents when they're stolen look like. I think I would sort of emphasize the big picture problem and the need for a sort of industry-wide solution to this thing, because it's we know that cred stuffing, and then especially if you add phishing, which is sort of obviously a different technique, but attacking an application at the same sort of inherent level that Dan was talking about earlier, between these two things, these are making up the vast majority of the confirmed breaches, right? And so it's like we hear a lot about attacks in our industry. Not all of those are actually successful, right? And so in terms of what is working day after day across the entire spectrum of attackers, from state-sponsored folks down to the beginners, it's these kinds of attacks, right? So I essentially what I would like to drive home to everybody is take this threat seriously, because this is probably the single largest threat, and it also empowers all these other kinds of threats as well. So take this extremely seriously, because this is probably where the war is going to be fought for the next 5 years.
Nice. Yeah, hot topic. Awesome, man. Thanks so much, Sander. Dan, how about you?
I just say don't use CAPTCHA ever. There's just no place for it. I hate it. Every time I see one, it makes my blood boil. They don't work. Human click farms are solving those for bots all day long. So they just create friction. So I'd encourage everybody to abandon the CAPTCHA, any of them, reCAPTCHA, fun CAPTCHA, and none of it's fun. It's annoying and it's friction.
The one that they've been using for years to train their self-driving car AI, that's the one that makes me the most mad. Right? You guys know about that, right? It's like when we're clicking identifying stoplights and stop signs, we're training an AI for free to use an application. That's the one that makes me super mad, because if I'm going to work, I want to get paid for it. So,
well, if they're learning from me on which one is a stop walk, stoplight, then that's not a good AI. I miss those things all the time.
I'm better at those than the 6 letters that are all crazy, because I get those wrong all the time.
I actually went to work for a human click farm, a Russian human click farm. I went through their training. I got pretty good at solving CAPTCHAs, and I solved like 50 or 60 CAPTCHAs and realized I hadn't earned 1 penny US yet. So they really exploit low income earners. Please, no one use CAPTCHA.
Dang, yeah, it's not good. What a great.
I want to hear the long version of that story.
Yeah, I do too, actually, because I wrote a piece about that stuff like 6 months ago, and it was really interesting. So we need to come on here and hear more stories from Dan.
That's upcoming DevCentral Connects Russian human farming CAPTCHA stories from Dan Woods.
Right.
And the spoiler alert, they don't pay very well. So,
don't quit your day job. No, they don't pay very well.
And don't make that your night job, whatever. Awesome, man. Well, guys, this has been a pleasure. It's been phenomenal. We've learned a lot. And yeah, it's just been awesome to have you guys on. Thanks so much for what you do for F5 and for the security, universe in general. So this has been really, really productive.
Enjoyed it very much. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you guys being here.
All righty. Well, Jason, another great show, my man. It's just, it's a pleasure every time. And to know that we got guys like Dan and Sander fighting the good fight for us, it's, makes you sleep a little bit better at night, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like we talked about sports at the top of the show, and talk about all the stories that athletes have from all that. It's like, I really think we need to, at the next in-person agility, we need to have an evening out with Dan, because I need to sit up against the bar stool and listen to Dan talk for several hours.
Yep. We need to get one of Sander Vinberg's homebrew beers inside of, in Dan Woods, and then just be like, Dan, go. And I want to hear every CIA secret you got, man. Give it to me. So awesome. Right. No, it's good stuff. Good stuff. Well, hey, I know we're here at time. In fact, we're a little bit over time, but it's been a great show. And so we just want to say to all of you out there in the DevCentral community, thanks for what you do. Thanks for making this the best community in the world. And thanks for connecting with us today on DevCentral Connects. We'll see you next time. It's going to be the security sidebar with me and Brian McKenzie next Thursday. Yep. Good to go. There it is. There it is. Yep. And then we'll be back.
And then 2 weeks from today, we got Volterra.
Yeah. Not just Volterra, but Volterra! Exclamation point. Good to go, man. All right. Well, Jason, it's been a great show, man. Thanks for connecting today.
Absolutely. Take care, community.
All righty, y'all. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.